We all know someone that's attempted to make sourdough but failed miserably. Maybe you are that someone. Don't worry, it's not your fault. Sourdough is absolutely delicious, but it's one of the most time-consuming, demanding types of bread, and even attempting it as a beginner is just setting yourself up for failure. Instead, you should be making this focaccia. It's simpler, can do anything sourdough can, and it's extremely beginner-friendly. I'll show you how to make this recipe, as well as give you 6 reasons why it's better than sourdough. First thing we're gonna make is our dough, and we're gonna grab a large bowl. In there, we're gonna throw in 600 grams of bread flour, 12 grams of salt, 12 grams of sugar, and 7 grams or 1 packet of instant yeast. Make sure to use instant yeast and not active yeast, because you need a bloom active yeast, whereas instant, you could just dump it in there. Oh, and if you don't have a scale and want measurement cups for this recipe, I'll have it listed in the description below, but I would recommend using a scale because it's just a lot more accurate. Now I'm gonna whisk all of our dry ingredients together, and now we're gonna throw in our wet ingredients, which is 16 grams of olive oil and 510 grams of water. Now with the large spoon, hit the side of the bowl and scare yourself. Oh my God, that scared me. Why did that scare me so badly? We're gonna now mix all those ingredients together and just do it until all the flour is mostly hydrated. Don't stress too much. You can use your hands as well, but typically I'll just really roughly mix it with the spoon. Now we're gonna cover our dough with a lid, and we're gonna let this rest for 15 minutes. In the meantime, let me tell you the first reason why this recipe is better than sourdough, which is you don't have to make a starter. It takes 1 to 2 weeks to make a starter from scratch, and that is just way too demanding for any beginner or first-time baker. You need to feed it religiously every day to get it where it needs to be, and it's very easy to screw up in the process. Discarding the excess and feeding it may sound like an easy daily task, but I promise you it adds up. And even if you're successful in making it, you still need to maintain it and feed it. This is my sourdough starter that I neglected and forgot about. It's very much no longer with us, but I'm honestly happy about it. It's less work for me. Now I will say the starter is the backbone for the flavor of sourdough, but I will show you a trick on how to get similar flavor in focaccia, but with a fraction of the amount of effort. 15 minutes later, the dough has not really changed too much. It kind of looks like oatmeal, honestly, but we're gonna fix that by doing our first set of stretch and folds, which all you're gonna do with a wet hand is grab one side of the dough, stretch it up, and then fold it over. Do this on all 4 sides of the dough, and then you're gonna put the lid back on it and then give it another 15 minutes. We're gonna continue doing this stretch and fold method every 15 minutes for just 2 more sets, and you should see the dough slowly start to build more and more structure. By the 3rd set, it should look more like a cohesive ball of dough with a nice bit of bounce to it. This brings us to the second reason why focaccia is better for beginner cooks, which is you don't need to knead it. Kneading dough is one of the hardest parts about bread making, and honestly, most people, including myself, under-knead their dough. And if you're making sourdough, there's a lot more technical kneading techniques as well as forming of the dough, which is a lot harder if you're doing it for the first time. But for focaccia, the only kneading that is needed is 3 rounds of stretch and folds, and that's it. From here, you could just throw the dough in a 9x13 baking dish, let it rest and double in size for 2 hours, and then bake it. Or if you want to develop more flavors, you could throw a lid back on it and then throw it in your fridge to rest overnight, which will develop more flavors and gluten. This actually leads to my 3rd tip, which is if you like that boozy fermented flavor that sourdough has, you could still achieve a similar product with your focaccia by letting it sit and ferment in the fridge overnight. I personally leave my focaccia in the fridge for 2 to 3 days, and it will develop a similar boozy fermented smell and flavor than sourdough. Now I will say the flavor from sourdough is better and has more depth to it, but I still prefer this 3-day focaccia ferment in the fridge. You get very similar flavor with just a fraction of the amount of time it takes versus making sourdough. Now 3 days later, our focaccia is looking very bubbly. A lot has happened and flavors have developed in that time. If you give it a sniff, it smells super boozy and delicious. Now I'm gonna grab our baking dish, which is a non-stick 9x13 pan. You can use a sheet pan or any regular baking dish you have, but please note, if it's not non-stick, then you have to use parchment paper. The parchment paper will not let the bottom of your focaccia get as crispy, but it will prevent it from sticking, and trust me, you don't want it to stick. Now I'm gonna drizzle a decent bit of olive oil along the bottom of the pan, and with my hands, I'm gonna spread it out evenly, and I'm gonna spread it onto the sides of the pan as well. I'm also going to scoop out all of our dough from the bowl and then lay it down evenly in our baking dish. Do your best to stretch it out and let it cover as much of the baking dish, but if the dough is resisting you a little bit, don't worry. It's still very cold, so we gotta let it get to room temperature, and once it does, it'll fill in all those gaps. We're gonna cover our dough with a lid, and we're gonna let it sit on the counter until it's come to room temperature. So if you feel the bottom of the pan, it should not feel cold anymore. This will take around 3 hours, and about 45 minutes before you think the dough is ready to bake, we're gonna head on over to our oven and set to 450 degrees convection bake. 3 hours have passed, and if you take a look at this dough, it's looking very nice. It has very much doubled in size, taking up all the nooks and crannies, and there's a lot of air that's developed in the dough, giving it a nice little jiggle. From here, I'm gonna drizzle a little bit of olive oil, and now we're gonna dimple our dough. I like to do one even dimpling across the whole dough, and then I'll dimple any individual spots that need a little bit more love. To finish this off, we're gonna hit it with a sprinkling of some flaky salt, and then we're gonna throw this in our 450 degree convection bake oven for anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes, depending how crispy you want it. 35 minutes later, you can see I have a beautifully baked focaccia, and one good tip to know if it's ready is if it pulls off the sides. You can see here it's shifting in the pan. Now you do want to remove it from the pan as soon as possible, so I'm gonna flip it onto a wire rack, and behold that bottom crust. It is toasted nicely and reminds me a lot like a pizza dough, honestly. And now this is our beautiful and stunning focaccia, and now let's get into the fourth reason why I think this is better than sourdough, which is it takes significantly less time. Even if you decide to do the 3-day ferment in the fridge, that is still a fraction of the time it would take for you to just make the starter of sourdough. That's not even including the bread. Plus, even though it's still a lot of time to make focaccia, all of it is just done on the side. If you add up all the actual manual elbow grease you put into making this, it's like 15 to 20 minutes of actual work. And you can still make this recipe in under 3 hours. You just don't throw it in the fridge and straight into the baking dish. For a beginner baker, focaccia seems way more manageable. Now let's jump into the fifth reason, which is anything sourdough can do, focaccia can do as well. The kinds of sourdough recipes that I love are the ones where they mix ingredients into the sourdough, so like a jalapeno cheddar sourdough, for example. Well, you could do the same thing with focaccia. This is a jalapeno cheddar focaccia loaf, and this is a pepperoni pizza focaccia loaf. I used my regular focaccia dough recipe, and all I did was split it in half and placed it in separate 8x8 non-stick sheet pans. Let it rest for 30 minutes to an hour so the dough is a little bit more malleable, and then you're gonna sprinkle in whatever toppings you want in there, fold it over on one side, sprinkle it in some more toppings, and then fold it over on the other side to close it all off. From here, you're gonna do the same thing as our regular focaccia. Let the dough rest and get to room temperature for anywhere between 2 to 3 hours. Once it's doubled in size, we're gonna now dimple it same as last time, and we're gonna put all the rest of our toppings on top of it. Alternatively, if you don't wanna mix the ingredients into the dough, you can just put the toppings on top of it, and I think it's just as good. But now we're gonna throw it in that same 450 degree convection bake oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. 35 minutes later, I'm gonna remove it from the pan, and now you have a beautiful jalapeno cheddar focaccia as well as a pizza focaccia. And the sixth reason why I think focaccia is better than sourdough is because focaccia is for parties while sourdough is just for you. Focaccia is the perfect thing to bring to any cookout, watch party, or potluck. I like to cut them into these nice little bite-sized rectangular pieces, or I like to turn it into a beautiful, delicious sandwich. I've made focaccia for all my family and friends hundreds of times, and every time they always ask for me to make it again. You can do the same thing for sourdough, but honestly, it's just not as good. The form factor of slices of sourdough isn't as good for a group of people, in my opinion. Bonus tip, if you guys still are hell-bent on making sourdough, I'm not gonna stop you, feel free to do it, but I would highly recommend your very first sourdough loaf should be sourdough focaccia. It is the best of both worlds. It is the easiest bread for beginners to make, and you get to use that sourdough that you've been nurturing for weeks. But if you wanna make something that can be done in just a few hours right now, I highly recommend you check out my pumpkin cinnamon roll recipe. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers, and I appreciate you guys so much.